And moving on to York, it's always said that you love having winners at York, but any winner's important, of course.
Yeah. And everyone loves having winners at York.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I can't tell you how many people keep telling me that I line them up for York because I'm from Yorkshire. It's absolute nonsense. I line them up from York because it's the
good prize money always.
It's fantastic. It's the best.
And obviously the feature race of one of the feature races is the International. You won it a few years ago, obviously with Baid. Maljum's had a bit of a tough time with injuries. He promised so much. Getting back to it this year, he ran a really good race at Ascot, and then is faster ground probably what you've been in search for with him?
Absolutely. And he's a good horse, him, but he lost his confidence and he got an injury, a bad injury, and then he ran once last year and ran poorly. It was a bit of a rush, running the Joel Stakes, didn't show anything. He's been much better this year, he's trained much better. He's really had a good spring and summer so far, but every race I feel he's getting better. And you know, it was Tom's idea to put some blinkers on him, and he felt, you know, he said at Ascot, when I went for him, he sort of he wasn't really sort of focused on what he was supposed to do, and then the penny dropped when the thing was all over. So you know, he seemed to run better and he was staying on well. I think he needs fast ground. I mean, I want to try him a mile and a quarter. This is a tough race to try him, but I don't know whether he just needs a really fast run mile on a stiffish track or whether he genuinely needs a mile and a quarter. But certainly last time he looked like he would be closer if he'd gone a bit further, and certainly at Ascot he looked like he'd have done the same. So we have options. If it does, that inch of rain does come, he could run in a Strensel, which is only 9, and he's in the celebration mile, and I don't want to run him in the Winter Hill because I want to run a horse called My Prospero in that. So he'll run somewhere next week, all being well.
And the other feature race, obviously the Ebor, the namesake of the meeting, you've got Baid's half brother Nakib. Has he been a little disappointing this year? He sort of ended his last season on a flat note, but he came back and showed a lot more promise last time.
Yeah, I've taken a bit of working out him. He's quite a smart horse, but we ran him in the Copper Horse at Ascot, and I just said to Jim, just drop him out and just get him to finish, because he was up the front in his races and fading and looking like he didn't really want to go. So I said, just drop him out and just try, and we wriggled through a few. And I thought he ran a really good race. If you watch it again, actually, it was a bit unfortunate because he was just starting to make his run, and so a couple closed on him and he had to stop, and he couldn't really, he spent half a furlong trying to do that, and then he stayed, and he was only beaten 6 lengths. So I thought that was a good run, and that was backed up at Newbury, where he came from last and nearly won. And unfortunately we had a mistake in our office, which we meant to run him in cheek pieces again and no tongue tie, and we declared a tongue tie and no cheek pieces. So now I've no idea whether he needs cheek pieces, a tongue tie or anything, but I think definitely needs riding like that. Now whether a mile and 6 at York will be a little bit short for him, ridden like that, but we'll see if they go a nice strong pace, and you know, hopefully he'll run a good race.
I'm sure I was guilty of a mistake like that.
We all make mistakes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Is a race like the Ebor something that you kind of always had in mind, or was just as the season progressed?
Well, no, I just as the season progressed. Once we figured out what made him tick, we had lots of problems with the horses in general in the spring, so you know, they seem to be running more consistently now, so hopefully he'll run a good race.
And moving on to a really progressive horse, Al Najm. He's since the gelding at the end of last season, he's really turned a corner, and you wouldn't know where
he's a bit unfortunate, him, because he threw a splint on his right fore like a golf ball on the outside, funnily enough, and he was really sore on it for a long time in the spring. Now it may prove to be a blessing, but we always thought he was Hunt Cup material, and with the potential of going a bit better in time. And He won at Newcastle a moderate race with no weight. Not a moderate race, but with no weight. And then he won okay at Ascot. They absolutely crawled, and it didn't suit him at all. He was always just doing a bit too much, Tom thought. But he picked up well. I thought he won nicely. And obviously he went up 8. He's got a £6 penalty, I think, at York. So the Clipper race is the obvious race. But he's going to get an entry in the Strensall as well, just in case. But I think the Clipper race is a good race for him.
And you may also have Godwinson if the rain arrives in.
Yeah,
in the
he just run wherever it rains now. I've made 2 mistakes with him running him on faster ground. He just wants soft ground, and he's ready to win. I always thought I've thought for some time that the Cambridgeshire might be his race, but it's a long time. That's not till the end of September. So he'll run there, or he'll go to Sandown on the 29th.
And in the city of York, you've got Lake Forest. Came back with a really good run at Royal Ascot. Do you have high hopes?
Backed it up in the Hackwood in a good race. Very strong for the grade. Yeah, I'm going to run him in the city of York. He wants fast ground. The faster the better for him. I mean, even a blind man can see that it looks like 7 furlongs is what he needs, because both times he's been at his strongest at the line. So let's hope he was right. He's a pretty talented horse. He's not very big. And he's pretty talented.
No worries on the track, obviously you haven't won there last season.
I do have worries on the track, actually. It's not my favourite track, that 7 furlongs at York, because they tend to, especially for a hold-up horse, they tend to fan out up the straight, and they don't race as tight as they would on a round track or a straight track. If there are 10 runners on a straight track, they usually race together. But on that round track, when they come off, some go that way, some go that way. It's always a bit messy, especially with a race run on the Saturday when, we've had 4 days racing on it and looking for different ground. So I thought Sacred, I thought that played against her last year in that race, because they did that and she lost her cover, but there we go.
Sacred being one of my favourite horses, and I'm sure Joey will attest, she could never seem to get the grips with York, whereas Newbury was tailor-made for her, wasn't it?
Yeah, she was a really good filly, and but I think the race at the Golden Jubilee, or whatever it's called now, Platinum Jubilee, when she was second to an 80-1 shot, which was gutting, but I think that killed her. She was absolutely spot on, and everything was right, and Tom was cantering and he took it up, and she didn't find a lot in front, and then that horse came and did her. And I think that finished her. She was never the same after that.
And she's off to the breeding sheds now?
She is in foal to Blue Point, I think.
Fantastic, yeah. I'm sure you can look forward to her progeny in future years.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah. And staying with the Cheveley Park theme, Unequal Love was a nice winner for you at Royal Ascot.
Yeah.
Was it right that you were possibly thinking of withdrawing on the morning of the race with worries on the ground, a bit quick?
Not really, no. I don't know where that came from. It was. I mean, it is right that I wouldn't have run her. That wasn't my first choice of race. And Mrs. Thompson had all her grandchildren in her box, and she asked if she could have a runner, and she was the only entry. So we flushed her out, and she's never asked me. I've been training for them for 37 years. She's never, ever, ever asked to run a horse in a particular race. So that was the least we could do. So she was running whatever. And actually it was wonderful to see her face and all her grandchildren there in the winner's enclosure. It was an absolutely fantastic, joyous occasion for us.
And finally, just the last one to sort of note, Waffy, and he's going to go for the 1 mile 4 handicap at York next.
I think so. He'll go in the 1.25 mile race. So I think he looks like he'll get a 1.5 mile. I thought he was a bit unfortunate at Goodwood. Ran a good race, but he was a bit unfortunate. He's only 86, he went up 3, he's 86, so it'll be 50-50 whether he gets in. I'm not sure he'll have enough weight for James to ride him, but he's a useful horse, and he's took a good step forward from Hamilton. And James, I think, was very pleased with the way he raced, because I don't think he liked the way he raced at Hamilton. He was all over the shop. Although, he's okay, him.
With the gelding, do you think between Windsor and Hamilton that's kind of the making of him? Is he just not had his mind on the job? Or?
Well, if you saw him run at Windsor, you'd have chopped all 4 legs off. He was terrible. but he was better at Hamilton, but James wasn't sure about him. I mean, he won it a long way in the end, but halfway up the straight it was, oh, crikey, this might not win, but he was fine. But at Goodwood he raced much better, and I think James really liked him at Goodwood, whereas he wasn't sure at Hamilton.
Okay. And finally, William, it'd be remiss of me not to ask, if for the podcast viewers, having worked here for 3 years, if you could maybe steer us in the direction of one horse that you think might win next week, or you have high hopes for.
The one in the Melrose.
Okay. We'll look forward to that one.
Never mentioned it, did he? There we go.
We'll have that with you.